Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and I just had the best birthday weekend of my life so far.
Yay!
Thanks to Voyse.
I try.
And joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners to another Monday. Would you like to hear something interesting?
Always.
Did you know that most corrupt CEOs are from pretzel companies?
What?
They're always so twisted.
Oh. Like, you need to show me the statistical facts on that. I took that way too serious.
You did.
Like, we need to find these people.
Who are they?
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for thought.
So, Voyse.
Timstradamus.
I've been smelling this for the last however long we've been setting up.
A hot minute now.
What have you brewed for us this morning?
I have brewed for you a citrusy chai raspberry tea. In it is cinnamon, cardamom, allspice, orange peel, and raspberry bits.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah. You've been killing it.
Thank you. I've really been trying to play with the palate because, as I know, you like tart and citrusy things.
That's an 11 out of 10.
Yes.
I feel like you're Remy and I'm his brother because you make these amazing things and all I can say at the end is, yeah, tastes good.
I'm like, do you taste that? It's the colors everywhere.
Yeah.
In your mouth, through your palate, and your nose.
Yep.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your morning brew, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for not sleeping at the hospital with my wife? My pregnant wife has gestational diabetes and is still a few months away from giving birth. The doctors put her on insulin, but it wasn't working and her blood sugar levels were still high. She called the doctor and was recommended she go to the hospital. She decided to drive herself to the hospital because I was at work. In fact, I was in a meeting and didn't know what was going on until after my meeting ended. When she got to the hospital, they confirmed that everything was fine with her and the baby, but that they wanted to admit her to get her sugar levels under control. At work that day, I received news that I was getting a promotion and I wanted to celebrate by having a few drinks at home with my buddy. I am always with my wife when I'm not working. I only hang out at home with a friend about once a month. I figured with everything being fine, it would actually be a good time to hang out because she wouldn't feel as left out, as she is unable to drink currently. However, I didn't feel comfortable doing that without talking to my wife about it first. After work, I packed some things for my wife, stopped at the store to pick her up some stuff she wanted, and drove to the hospital to see her. She assured me that her and the baby are fine, but that she was getting bored being there. Eventually, I told her about my promotion and asked her if she minds if I drink at home with my buddy instead of sleeping there with her. She said she was okay with it. So I texted my buddy to let him know we were good and I would pick him up in a few hours. When it was almost time to leave, she started to act cold to me and then told me to just leave already. So I continued with the plan and I left at 9 p.m. to begin drinking with my buddy at home. A few hours later, she texts me and tells me that I'm an a-hole for not staying with her and that she was very hurt by it. I went to the hospital first thing in the morning to be with her, and she refused to talk to me and told me to leave. Am I the a-hole for not staying at the hospital with her that night?
This one's a pretty easy one to get us started into Monday with. This is definitely not the way I would have gone about celebrating a promotion with my pregnant wife in the hospital, but I guess I'm going to have to say I just think that both of them are the a-hole for the lack of communication and the consideration. Obviously, you'd like your partner to be there. It's a hospital. No one wants to hang out there alone, especially overnight. Hospitals can, in my opinion, be kind of a little creepy. My experiences only.
Kinda. Really creepy at night.
But that could be different for everyone. So, yes, in a perfect world, you love for your partner to be there. On this day, though, it happens that her husband, ROP, gets a promotion. That's fantastic. He wanted to celebrate with his buddy. He asks if it's okay At that point, as his wife, you should have been able to tell him the truth, that it bothered you. That's what communication is about. Not just the good times. You got to tell people when something irks you, or if something will potentially irk you, because at least then he can make a proper decision at that point. But what you did was you said, sure. I don't know how the context or the tone went, because it almost sounds like he's a little tone deaf, because you do have to sometimes read between the lines when it comes to certain people if they're really not good at articulating how it is they feel, or communication skills aren't as good as they should be. But if all things are fair and she said, yes, go ahead, that was on her too. Just as much as it was on him, not seeing that he should have been there. This could have all been avoided by clear and concise communication. Hey, babe, I need you here tonight. We can celebrate your promotion together on another night.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is the a-hole. And the reason being is, how is it that you couldn't be there for your partner to support them while they're going through this? That it's not easy having to deal with sugar levels being crazy. Your body feels that. On top of that, she's pregnant. That one day of spending it with your wife in the hospital is 100% much better than trying to find a reason to bounce out because you want some entertainment to drink with a friend. Now, there are some not the a-holers that say exactly what you said. She should have actually communicated, and communication is key. Other not the a-holers say, you know, a lot of family members that tend to hang out at the hospital try and dictate to the staff how to do their job, and they can most of the time get in the way of them actually doing their job properly. That sometimes family members there, not a good idea. I think in the end, it comes down to this one little bit that I think sort of stuck out to a lot of people. Before our OP left, he said that his wife was acting sort of cold towards him. And rather than him come out and say, hey, honey, what's wrong? He ignored it because he didn't want something to rain on his parade. And I feel that a lot of the you're the a-holers come from this standpoint. You knew something was up. Otherwise, you wouldn't have put it in your writing. Because the way that you said, yeah, you can definitely do it, and then suddenly she changes her tone, doesn't sound quite that right here. A lot of people wondered if maybe the way that she said it is, yeah, I guess.
I can get why people would say that's the hang up and the stop for them. I still am going to be on the side of clear, concise communication and not passive aggressive anger, saying something's okay and then before they leave being upset all of a sudden. That doesn't work, and that's not healthy. I would just say that if you're going to act that way on one thing, what other things are you guys doing that towards?
I can understand that. I think for me, I lean a little bit more towards our OP's the a-hole, but only because in his writing, he signifies that he's aware of her cold attitude, doesn't try and head that off before it gets worse. And then essentially, there was also something that kind of irked me a little, at least for me, when he talks about, I'm glad that she's essentially in the hospital because now I get to hang out with my friend and it won't feel weird having her there because she can't drink too. It makes it seem as if this OP's wife is more of a burden because she can't drink with them. I've heard of a lot of people who say they can't be at any kind of event when people are drinking if everybody's not drinking. And then you and I have been a part of many things where one or more of us have not drank, and there's been like the few that have enjoyed a drink just to get a little buzzed, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
OP feels more like that person. If everybody's not doing it, then it's not an enjoyable experience. And when you come at it from that point of view, where in your writing, it feels as if your own wife is a third wheel rather than something valuable to be and include inside of the funness, starts to show me what potential character you have.
That's a good viewpoint to have put on this. That does give me pause. I still do feel the way I feel. I think that still doesn't give someone an excuse to tell you one thing and then change it at the very end. Communication is still important to me, but I do get, and I like that little different keyhole to look through, because you are right. You're delving more into who he is and why it was so easy to look past things.
I think also on here, I also stem it to, and I do agree with you 100% when it comes to communication. I'm sure her saying yes and then realizing later as she's sitting there and it truly stewing and the impact of her being alone and dealing with this alone probably started becoming more and more of a, there is nothing like sitting alone and reflecting to truly twist your perspective of something, which would have been, I want to give my husband his fun time because he got this promotion too, but then I was left alone and I really needed him.
I want to make it clear. A good partner would wait to have that celebration with his wife and his friends on another date. I am not agreeing with how he conducted his choice. All I'm saying is strictly that they didn't have the communication, and this all could have been pretty non-drama if you had just talked honestly.
I agree with that. Well, let's go into our next story, and I found another AITA for names. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my niece who stole my dead daughter's name? My young adult daughter died 13 years ago. We share a name as it is a family name. The tradition has always been that this is the name given to the first daughter of each generation for over 100 years. My mom, my daughter, and I share this name. When my niece became pregnant 6 years ago, she asked if she had a girl, could she use the name? Note that she didn't ask to use it as a tribute. She's been jealous of the tradition not including her for as long as she's known of it. I said no. It would break my already broken soul to share her name with another family member. No one was happy that I selfishly said no, but since she had a boy, nothing came of it. Fast forward to yesterday, when my mother told me that my niece is again pregnant. This time it's a girl, and she has already named her insert dead daughter's family name here. My mom reminded me that it's her name too, and she wants to pass it down. First, it's my name as well. Second, it's still my daughter's name even though she's dead. Third, my daughter has a surviving sister that now will never be able to name her own potential future daughter in honor of her dead sister. I don't expect my mother, sister, or niece to understand why I feel as I do, as they've never lost a child. That said, I don't think it's too hard to consider that if a grieving mother says you may not use her daughter's name, you probably should respect that and choose another name without question and certainly without guilt. It already tears the already gaping hole in my soul wider open each time I hear a mother calling her daughter by what is also my daughter's name. But now my family is creating a lifelong, in-my-face agony that they could easily prevent, and they've done it knowingly. I feel utterly betrayed by my family, especially by my mother. She went behind my back along with my niece and sister, knowing that I begged that my daughter's name not be used. When I came unglued on her yesterday, my mom told me that if my surviving daughter has a daughter in the future that she can use it too. It's perfectly fine for two kids in one family to have the same name. I'm floored. Am I the a-hole for being so upset and saying no?
It sounds like she's held on to a lot of, rightfully so. Obviously, she lost her child. We're parents, and I could not fathom that. So I'm thankful for everything in our lives and that we haven't had to deal with that. I can only imagine that depth of hurt. I hope that she's been getting help because it sounds like she needs it. All I heard was pain in that writing. You don't own names, and you don't own what they mean to other people either. We're not saying there's some religious thing on the background or this is some offensive name. We're saying that this was something that got started and traditionally it was passed down from mother to first daughter. And they are correct. If the surviving niece also wants to name her daughter that same name and they have two of the same name at the same time, does it hurt anyone? Does it change how special your daughter was to you? She has a really unfortunate way of looking at life right now, and I know it's just through the hurt lens. So, in my opinion, you are the a-hole. You forcing other people to adhere to your rules will only separate you further from the people you love. And it sounds like you need them more than ever, because I don't hear rudeness. I just hear that they're choosing to pass on the tradition. Please get the help you need.
So the consensus on Reddit was that our OP is the a-hole. And a lot of it stems to you don't own a name. You also don't own how other people want to either name their child or what they feel is right for them, essentially. That yes, this was a tradition for you that was special, and that specialness doesn't go away. But what doesn't happen is that you go around and dictate how others live. Now, the not the a-holers say you're not the a-hole for feeling how you feel, but you're doing yourself a disservice by allowing your loss and your anger towards the situation to create in you a very bitter stance. Now, there was one comment that I thought really resonated with me, and they said, look, you have to stop carrying this name with so much hurt. Anytime that you hear it, it should be as if the universe is trying to keep the memories of your daughter alive, and just let go of that anger and hurt. It's time for you to let it go. I think for me, I have to agree with you, Timstradamus. It sounds like OP definitely needs some help when it comes to grieving. And right now her outlet is full of anger and bitterness and hurt. It's as if the memory of her daughter will get washed away if there's others that are named that way. And I feel if it involved other things, like let's say her daughter was interested in tennis or was interested in music or anything of that sort, that OP would take a stance against it because for her, it's a cherished memory with her daughter that could get washed away by someone else. I think a lot of individuals that have felt loss are afraid that the memory of their loved ones will fade away. That is only as true as you let it be true. And I think for OP, it's something that she'll just have to work through.
She's got to go be given the tools to be able to navigate this, because I can't imagine it's very easy. But hopefully she was able to read those comments and maybe it'll get her in the right direction.
I hope so. Well, let's go to our next story, and I'm getting a little peckish. Am I the a-hole for leaving the restaurant even though my daughter-in-law hadn't finished eating? I, 58 female, invited everyone in my family out for dinner at a nice restaurant for my husband's 60th birthday. I told everyone about the event a month ago. The guest list also included my daughter, Sarah, 24, and her wife, Elizabeth, 28. Elizabeth works in a demanding, stressful, but well-compensated corporate position. She does have a tendency of overworking herself. Unsurprisingly, she was late to the dinner. Sarah said Beth had cleared her schedule for the day, but there was a last-minute issue and she had to leave for work. Elizabeth made it while everyone else was starting dessert. She apologized, gave us a fancy bottle of wine as a gift, and sat down. We were all done and ready to go, but Elizabeth hadn't fully eaten yet. It was getting late, so as people started leaving, my husband and I also decided to leave as it was getting late. We didn't wait for Elizabeth to finish her dinner. The next day, I got a call from Sarah saying it was not okay for us to just leave them by themselves like that. I explained and said that it was getting late, but she insists that we should have stayed. I may be the a-hole here, but I said maybe she needs to take off her rose-colored glasses about Elizabeth. She got upset and hung up the phone. Was I the a-hole?
All right. Well, there was a peculiar little thing at the end of that. She should take her rose-colored glasses off about her partner. That would smack of there being other incidences that have happened that our OP is aware of.
There were some commenters that was asking, did your daughter-in-law order an entire meal? Because it's understandable if you don't want to stay and wait for someone's entire meal while they ate through it. Other Redditors pointed out, I've had to come to these events when it was a little later, and usually I got an appetizer that way if anybody wanted to share some, and I could have a few nibbles and it wouldn't take too long. Our OP did confirm that the daughter-in-law just ordered an appetizer, but that it took a while to get it.
Okay, so there was no other incidences as to why our OP would say such a cutting comment.
Our OP doesn't say anything other than just that one comment.
Interesting, because that would lead me to believe that there was more. Saying take off the rose-colored glasses to someone is kind of alluding to other things that her daughter has looked past in their relationship that our OP is very aware of, right? You don't just make that off of one incident. That's very interesting.
For a lot of our Redditors, they've pointed out and say, based on that one comment that you've pointed out, you sound a bit homophobic here.
Interesting. So because she was never able to clarify what that sentence meant, now we're jumping to homophobia.
Potentially.
I'm not ready to jump on that. That doesn't mean that to me. That's a strong, vague statement, because I've only ever heard that when a partner's being bad to another partner. You're able to look through all of the mistreatments or shortcomings of someone because you love them. So I don't know if I'm willing to jump on the homophobia train with this one, but I will say this. She ordered an appetizer. She got there late. She was running late. Something came up, a meeting. Unfortunately, things happen. Life happens. She says that everyone leaves after they eat their dessert. It's getting late. How late are we talking?
Our OP also doesn't clarify that.
See, there's a lot of missing holes here that if you're unwilling to give the details on, you're hiding something, because normally those little details make a lot of the story. It leads me to believe you're hiding things. I would say this. If I'm in that situation and I'm running late to a dinner that we had planned with family and friends, I would not expect for anyone to stay longer than they wanted to, especially if it was late. While I believe that the leaving the dinner after everyone's done, because she says multiple people have gotten up to leave. It's late. She doesn't specify that, which is an issue for me. But no one owes anyone their company. And I don't mean that to be harsh or anything. It's more like, who knows how long they've already been there. Those things normally take 2 to 3 hours, depending on if you like your company and if the food's good. For them to have wanted to go home, life happens in and around dinners. You have to keep up with everything. I don't know, other family members are dealing with kids, babysitters, animals. There's so many things that go around planning nice dinners.
Especially when you're dealing with older people, a lot of the time sleeping routines are set more because of health reasons than anything else.
Sure. We're also talking about medications. There's so much to take into account when you're talking about big family dinners. So I won't say that the OP is the a-hole for that part. What I will say is there is an undertone of you not liking your daughter-in-law. Now, I don't know if we can attribute that to you being homophobic. That one, I'm still not really seeing how other people are seeing that, but I can understand if that's how you view it. I can respect that. But for me, I really can't, because there's too little. I can only say that it sounds like you definitely don't like, is it Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay. You definitely don't like her for some reason. So in my opinion, you aren't the a-hole for leaving the dinner early with some of your family members, but you are the a-hole for hiding your potential dislike for your daughter-in-law behind civility.
Those are very good points. The consensus on Reddit was that our OP's not the a-hole. However, a lot of those viewpoints started shifting, as I told you in the previous comment, that Redditors asked what it is that her daughter-in-law ordered, and they said an appetizer. It wouldn't have been very long to go ahead, sit, enjoy some company with your daughter-in-law and your daughter. Instead, you find a reason to leave. A lot of Redditors saying it sounds like you're potentially homophobic. And exactly like you said, Timstradamus, that you're hiding that either homophobia or dislike for the daughter-in-law behind civility. And that resonated with a lot of individuals who are and have dealt with those types of people. For me, I have to side along with you, Timstradamus. There's not enough information for me to go ahead and jump down someone's throat based on their character. I can go ahead and say that a lot of Redditors have experienced this in one way or another. It doesn't feel like our OP likes her daughter-in-law, and that could be a reason that it influences the choices that they do. But there's a lot of individuals that don't like people and don't want to hang out with them either. In my mind, it's your time and your comfort. If you don't want to hang out with those people, you don't have to. The same way as they don't have to hang out with you. It goes both ways. Rather than OP telling her daughter, it's late, we just wanted to go home, she decided to make jabs. And once you do that, you compromise your character if you're not careful. I think another point to go ahead and bring up, at least for me, is how our OP said, unsurprisingly, she was late to the dinner. So it makes me wonder how many times her potential daughter-in-law has either been late to events or has made our OP and her husband feel as if they're not a priority. And that could be one of the reasons why she doesn't like her daughter-in-law.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask the question earlier, was that statement would only be said if these are things that have happened on occasion, at least more than this one incident.
I think my real problem here is that OP is not giving us concise times. If you're talking about being at a little soiree for 3 to 4 hours, I can understand people getting tired. A lot of people get tired of being at dinner parties for, I'd say, probably 2 to 2.5 hours. That tends to be yours and my sweet spot. After 2.5 to 3 hours, we're ready to just go home and relax. Is getting late 9 o'clock or is getting late 11 o'clock? Without these types of details, I have to wonder, what kind of person is our OP if you're deciding to omit details? To go ahead and hop to one assumption to another, the only thing that I can 100%, at least in my perspective, lock down, our OP does not like her daughter-in-law. She does not give us clarity as to why. And that could be a reason why it influenced her choice to not stay. You're not the a-hole for wanting to go home, but you are the a-hole if you've done that for other individuals, but for whatever reason, have not provided that same courtesy to your daughter or your daughter-in-law.
Well, now there's going to have to be a talk at some point, especially after the way that whole conversation she had with her daughter just ended. You're going to have to come to terms with exactly how you feel about Elizabeth, and you're going to have to tell your daughter at some point.
Agreed. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this situation. Am I the a-hole for refusing to stop touching my wife and telling a couple to keep their kids in check? Admittedly, neither I, 41 male, nor my wife, 39 female, thought I was the a-hole for this, though after telling our family members about this, they largely disagreed, so I would like a more objective opinion. Very recently, my wife and I celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary. We adore each other and love to celebrate these sorts of things. So we had a very nice vacation plan to celebrate, and frankly, though this event was immensely annoying, it didn't ruin the experience by a long shot. We were in a very nice hotel with a pool and hot tub for part of our vacation, and we made use of both of those facilities each night we were there, although thankfully the hotel was quite quiet given the time of year. The very last 2 nights in that hotel, there was a family at the hot tub and pool that my wife and I found rather annoying. The parents seemed about our age, and their 3 children all seemed to be under the age of 10 or 12. Their kids were very loud and rambunctious, while their parents did nothing to quiet them down. The final night, my wife and I were there. She and I were at the hot tub after a dip in the pool quite late. She was sitting on my lap, her back to my stomach. I had my arms around her. We were talking and occasionally giving each other a kiss. Clearly a sensual position, but nothing sexual going on in public and entirely appropriate for a hot tub at about 9 p.m. The family came into the hot tub room while we were there. The kids were in and out of the hot tub and were very, very loud. The parents sat decidedly apart from each other in the hot tub and seemed more invested in huffing at us than paying attention to each other or controlling their children. I kissed my wife on the lips at one point after she whispered a joke to me. Now, we weren't shoving our tongues down each other's throat. We just had a nice kiss. This must have made the mother uncomfortable because she asked that we not do that with their children present, not that they were paying us any attention. I told her that that was not going to happen. We were a married couple in a hot tub at night. There is nothing wrong with us giving each other a kiss. The father then chimed in that we were a bit inappropriate because their kids were present and asked that we not be so touchy with each other while their kids were there. I told him that we were not inclined to change our behavior when they couldn't even keep their kids in check. So they scowled at both of us, and my wife and I soon decided to return to our room. Am I the a-hole?
What a sad way to end off a vacation. No! You should have stayed. I mean, it's a public area, and what they said was, in my mind, because I'm only going to measure this off of my experience with you, that doesn't sound like inappropriate PDA. He said that his wife is sitting on his lap in the hot tub and they kissed each other.
Not tongues, just like...
We're not talking about grotesque, over-the-top stuff. Your kids were making a whole lot of noise for, it sounds like, the duration of their stay there. And the ROP says they never went after the kids. No one was forcing you to sit in that hot tub and look at the couple. I would just wonder, why was it their prerogative to sit in that hot tub with them and stare at them and make life awkward for everyone? When you could have, I don't know, this sounds like a resort, so I'm certain there's a pool and there's lounging chairs around that you guys could have definitely sat in away from ROP and his wife. I don't believe you're the a-hole. Now, I can get where some people might hop off the train and go, obviously, PDA, terrible, in public. You shouldn't have been doing that. There are people that are like that. If I thought that this was inappropriate in any way, like we were passing the point of no return, like he says, there's not a tongue going down her throat and they're not gyrating on each other. Like,
I don't want to think about that.
I don't know. But I don't hear those things. I just hear that they're having a nice night. Why would that be your place to tell another couple, unless it gets inappropriate, that's inappropriate? You know what we would have done if we had truly felt that way? We would have just gotten up and enjoyed our time someplace else. So no, in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole.
Well, the consensus on Reddit was pretty mixed, in my opinion. A mixture of you're the a-hole, not the a-hole. The you're the a-holers came out and said, look, it's a social faux pas to use a public amenity as if you're in private. You're doing this in your own private residence is not a problem, but the people around you were starting to feel uncomfortable. Yeah, there's something different when you're sitting on someone's lap and you don't know what could really be happening under the water and the bubbles. And for them, they were feeling uncomfortable because, yes, they can see what you're probably looking at, like above the water. But if you're doing that above the water with them around, what are you potentially doing below the water? The not the a-holers came out saying, don't feel bad about being loving in public. It's not your fault that this couple probably has dead bedroom.
Now that's...
They're sitting apart from each other.
That's a real deal. If you're uncomfortable with other people's acceptable PDA, that maybe says a little bit more about you than it does them. I say acceptable because, yes, there is a line, and I think we can all understand that. Sitting on the lap, is that really that big a deal? Like, in my mind, I don't see that as... I've seen plenty of couples sitting on laps in hot tubs.
See, this is where I think everything becomes so divisive regarding this situation. How much PDA is acceptable? It depends on the person. For you and I, sitting on the lap isn't a big deal. If I saw someone else doing the same things that you and I do, I wouldn't even bat an eye at it. But then you have individuals that kind of stuff is a big no-no. You deal with older generations that have that viewpoint where, and I hate to say it, guys, but it's almost prudish to me. And it's not a bad way. That's who they are. It doesn't make it wrong. What makes it wrong when you try imposing your views and how to act on us as a couple.
I've seen some older folks do some nasty things in hot tubs, so...
I have as well.
It's just values. I understand that, though. Everyone grows up with a different set depending on how religious you are or the traditions and the culture. I get all of those things, but if it really bothers you that much, truly, and you're in a public setting...
Extricate your way out of the situation. Now, I find it funny because for whatever reason, well, let me go ahead and read it out loud. A Redditor says, nah, who cares? I thought you were going to say you were groping each other or something. You'll see worse at the schoolyard. To which other commenters replied, yeah, that's where all the boys go for the milkshakes.
That old slut.
It's still around. If anything, this just goes to show that there are different perspectives on what's an okay amount of PDA. I don't think for me the OP did anything wrong. If anything, rather than deal with the huffy puffiness of someone else, they decided to leave. I think our OP did a solid by going ahead and leaving out of this situation when it became uncomfortable. And that he'll just probably have to deal with certain people in the world not being okay with it. And that's not his problem. That's theirs. Well, let's go ahead and skip to our next story. Am I the a-hole for not being allowed at our family cottage? Every August, our family rents out a cottage near Bobcaygeon, Ontario. I, 28 male, have not been allowed in the past 3 years to go because the majority of my family doesn't want me there. They make up excuses that I'm too hard to deal with and don't want to be around me. This is my only summer getaway vacation that I get to have, and my parents won't let me come still. I miss going and don't get to go anywhere else in summer. My mom took me to a hotel in a neighboring city twice this year, but that's it. I want to go on trips and never do. It's been almost a year since I've been on a trip with the family. The rest I've done myself. Again, my older 2 brothers get to go, but I am not allowed. I think it's bullshit. The reason why they don't want to take me anymore comes down to multiple. I have CHS, cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, and I just didn't get along with my 2 older siblings in previous years. They also say I'm hard to predict. I used to drink a lot and talk to myself, bothered them. Now I don't drink anymore / haven't gotten drunk in nearly a year. I used to have unpredictable meltdowns and outbursts. Now I'm quiet and tame. Am I the a-hole?
So before we get started, hyperemesis, I know that's them talking about uncontrollable vomiting, but I don't quite know what the beginning was.
So CHS is essentially uncontrollable vomiting that's caused because someone's smoking cannabis.
Okay. Now, he says that's not the only thing that prevented him from going on these trips, or being invited anyway, is that he had
unpredictable meltdowns and outbursts.
Okay. And he liked to get drunk.
Correct.
Was there anything else that he has or he's spoken about?
I can let you know some things that he added in the comments if you'd like. So our OP says that they quit booze last year. But in my mind, that doesn't line up with what they talk about when they say that they don't drink anymore. Because in another comment, he says that they themselves only have drinks, maybe 1 to 2 beers, 1 or 2 times a week, which doesn't make sense because if you stop drinking, then you wouldn't have any beers in any part of the week.
Sounds like his definitions are a little skewed.
Right. At least it sounds like he's saying he hasn't drunk, at least based on how I'm reading it. Maybe he's meant it as he's not drinking to get drunk.
Yeah.
He's just drinking to get like a little tipsy. But regardless, if you're still drinking periodically, you technically haven't stopped drinking.
Yes.
OP hasn't said that he's got any sort of mental health problems, although he seems like he has admitted that he does have an addiction problem, at least when it comes to marijuana. He has said in the comment section how he's tried stopping 12 times in the 11 plus years since he's been smoking marijuana and has only been able to stop for about 14 to 59 days without smoking. He's actually been able to provide a lot of details. And OP in one comment says, I smoke about 1 gram per day, 1/4 per week, and 1 ounce per month. And no, I don't plan to use when there. I've had CHS for over 7 years. In another comment, our OP says, we just don't get along. I often would talk to myself in the mirror sometimes, or used to a lot, and don't anymore. I used to drink too much and now I barely touch alcohol. I used to at times be loud and obnoxious. Now I'm quiet and tame. Another comment, our OP says, again, they are basing their decision off of behavior from 3 to 4 years ago. And in a last comment that I picked up, OP says, not enough time has gone by to convince them I'm okay to be around now. I've lost several friends via social media because I said or did something they disliked. And just to provide some more context, OP says that he's 28.
So what is exactly he's asking if he's the a-hole for? Not being invited to the vacation.
Correct.
I don't know why that would make you the a-hole. That doesn't make any sense. That question doesn't make any sense. Am I the a-hole for not getting invited? Am I misunderstanding that? Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It wouldn't make you an a-hole just because people, based off of how you treated them in the past, decided not to invite you. That just means that's the circumstance. The thing with family is, the good ones, if you're a butt and you're unwilling to treat people with respect and with civility, they don't owe you a seat at the table. It sounds like they've probably dealt with this behavior for the better part of however long you've been having these trips. But based off of you being 28 and the last time you got invited was when you were 24, sounds like they've been dealing with it for a little while. Unfortunately, the only way that that's going to heal and you're going to get an invite is time. You working on those relationships outside of just wanting to go on a vacation. If you want to show someone that you've changed, because change can happen, takes a lot of work. When you're talking about family members and people you've wronged, because it sounds like there's a perceived wrong on that side of the family because of however you were acting, that is something that you're going to have to reach out and olive branch for and work on. So I guess really the question is, am I the a-hole because I did things that got me uninvited from a vacation with my family?
That makes more sense.
In this case, you would be the a-hole. I hope for you, though, it sounds like you're trying to work through things. But if you really want to get that invite back and spend quality time with your family while you still have them, because time just flows, nothing is promised. I can get that. I can get the hurt of wanting to be around people that you love and them not reciprocating that. But understand the outcomes are normally because of our actions. And they're holding you to that. So if you really want it, start trying to make those connections again.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is the a-hole. And our OP has said in the comment section that it sounds like he's just going to need time to deal with everything that he's got to deal with, and that he'll work towards it. I know it feels, as I was looking through our OP's profile and on all their previous postings, it almost felt as if they're using this as sort of an outlet regarding their recovery, potentially one of those sort of like online blogs or online diaries. I really hope our OP continues on the path. Knowing that you have a problem is so important for you to go ahead and grow as an individual and potentially right the wrongs in your life. You've already admitted that whatever you've said and done, you've done it towards friends on social media who've decided to cut you off. Your family's also made the hard choice to do the same. Now you're seeing that there's repercussions to the choices that you have made. It doesn't mean that nothing is fixable. It just means it's going to be a long road.
I am happy that at least he was able to see the comments, and it sounds like people were able to give him some much needed advice. And going forward, hopefully he's able to repair those relationships and get what he wants out of them.
Rooting for you.
Yep.
Well, let's go to our next story and see about changing some shoes. Am I the a-hole for not going home and changing my shoes for a restaurant's dress code? I, female 29, was recently invited to a work dinner as one of my colleagues is retiring. It was being held at a little barbecue restaurant in town. I was told that the dress code was smart casual. For context, I wore a nice skirt and button-up and a pair of Crocs. I live in a hot climate, and lots of people such as myself wear sandals, Crocs, flip-flops everywhere. When we got to the restaurant, it turned out they had a dress code, and the hostess loudly told me I couldn't come in wearing Crocs. It was extremely embarrassing in front of my coworkers. I don't really understand the problem because there were people wearing sneakers, Converse, etc., and that's fine, but Crocs aren't. It wasn't even a fancy restaurant, so I really wasn't expecting this. Anyway, one of my coworkers urged me to go home and change my shoes and come back. I was so distraught, I ended up just going home and not coming back. I suffer with anxiety, and the whole experience just made me melt down. My coworkers are now collectively angry at me for leaving and not coming back. My boss told me the event wasn't about me and I should have sucked it up. Was I an a-hole for leaving?
So, we have a fellow Croc enthusiast. I love me some Crocs. I would have to say, because it sounds like everything up until the Crocs on ROP are acceptable. She says she's got a button up and a skirt. And she says the reason why she walks around with Crocs is because she lives in a hotter climate.
Correct.
I guess for me, if you know, because I'm certain that she would have known about the dress code. That's probably one of the first things you do when you talk about going out to restaurants, especially if you've never been there before. She says it's not particularly a high end, so it caught her off guard.
That can almost be seen as sort of a slight, but continue.
Yeah. And she's just asking, is she the a-hole for not wanting to come back? I'm shocked you wouldn't have had a pair of shoes just in the car. I know a lot of people do that, especially when you're talking about company anythings. There should always be a backup of most things.
And by the way, if anyone listening out there hears this, if you're going out in Crocs and you're going to any kind of social convention, just have backup shoes in the car just in case.
Unfortunately, our OP did not do that. I think if I was in that situation, I know I definitely wouldn't have rolled up in there with Crocs.
Not even if you put it in all-terrain mode?
All-terrain mode is fun, but it took me a long time to even go out of the house with my Crocs.
Oh, yes.
It took me a little bit to get used to that. And I still have some times where I'm like, I don't want to go. Even if it's just to the store to grab something, there's something in me that's just like, just put on shoes.
Do you feel more comfortable when I do it with you?
That's the only reason why I'm really comfortable with wearing Crocs in public. Because I also wear Crocs with socks. I did not know that was a problem till my lovely wife showed me videos of people clowning on people with Crocs with socks. I enjoy it. It feels good. Anyway, I'm not going to defend my Crocs and wearing socks to anyone.
At this point, you could take off your socks and it looked like you'd have a pair of socks on.
They're comfortable. But for me, OP, you're the a-hole. You should have had a backup. Maybe this was a learning experience for you, and going forward, you'll be prepared. That's all I chalk this up to, is be prepared.
Well, the consensus on Reddit was that our OP is the a-hole. And there were some individuals that were asking, the only reason why anyone would say this event wasn't about you is if you were arguing with the staff because of your Crocs. Were you taking it that one step too far? And is that a reason why you didn't return back to the dinner?
Interesting.
Our OP never answered, but I thought that was a very interesting premise. The only reason why someone would say don't make it about you is if it looked like you were making it about you. Now, let me go ahead and bring out the humorous side of Reddit here. A Reddit commenter took the snippet from our OP that said, I was told that the dress code was smart casual, and they responded with, nowhere has that ever meant foam toddler shoes.
Why attack the Crocs?
And then that had another individual saying, I am still picturing the nice skirt with foam toddler shoes.
This is why I got embarrassed at the beginning about wearing Crocs.
I cannot even begin. Now I have to say, Timstradamus and I enjoy foam toddler shoes together.
This is the thing, okay? Before you introduced them to me, I thought they were ridiculous too. Like, I think you bought me my first pair of Crocs 7 years ago or something like that.
And it was a gag gift.
Yes, it was, because there's no way I would like these things. I didn't grow up with Crocs. I'm not sure when they started, but I know I didn't have them. And I'm not one of those people that likes to wear sandals. So when you gave them to me, yes, it was a gag gift, but then I put them on. And then I didn't have my toe get stubbed on any more door frames or walls.
Coffee tables.
And it's been so nice. I can't live without them now.
But they look ugly.
They do. I'll give them that. They're just comfortable.
If anything, our OP needs to know, I can understand wanting to be comfortable, but there are some events in your life that you have to be a little uncomfortable for. And just view it as it's doing a nice thing for someone else.
It was a retirement party.
Correct.
And I don't know how young our OP is. This might have just been a good learning experience for them, and going forward, they'll be prepared for things.
If anything, I think it was more rude to at least not reach out and say, hey, look, I don't feel comfortable coming back now. I'm just going to go ahead and stay at home. But that by far is much better to do than to go ahead and just ghost everyone.
Hopefully she learns from the experience.
Hopefully. Well, now that we're going on to our next story, let's see what's happening at this birthday party. Am I the a-hole for not caring that my daughter is going through a difficult time with a friend and returning her birthday gift after the way she treated her cousin? What happened? My daughter Brooke's birthday was on Friday, so we had a celebration at home. Everything was going well until it was time for singing. Brooke blew out the candles and her cousin Aria blew on the cake too. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law said oops and apologized. Aria obviously didn't understand. It was just an accident. But then Brooke turned it into a scene. She snapped at Aria, raising her voice and calling Aria a fucking brat. I immediately got firm and told Brooke to apologize. Brooke tried to argue that Arya ruined her birthday candles. I told Brooke that I don't care who you are or what day it is. It is never okay to treat a 3-year-old that way as a 20-year-old adult. Brooke refused to apologize and stormed off. After everyone had left, I informed Brooke that because she refused to apologize for the way she acted towards her cousin, I was returning her purse, which was the main gift I had bought her. She also got a Stanley Cup, but I let her keep it since it's something practical for school. Brooke tried arguing that she's too old for me to be confiscating her things, and returning the purse was going too far. But I just told Brooke that I bought the purse with my own money and was free to do what I pleased with it. And if she wanted to act like a child, then she's going to get treated like one. Why I'm writing. My wife, Kimberly, said she is not going to rebuy the purse for Brooke, and she agreed Brooke was out of line for how she treated Arya during the birthday celebration. But Kim said that I should have been more understanding for Brooke because of what's going on with Jessie. Jessie has been Brooke's best friend since they were in 4th grade. The problem is that Jessie recently got engaged, and her fiance is not a good guy. Brooke and Jessie's family staged an intervention to talk to Jessie, but Jessie is insistent on the marriage and has been talking to Brooke less and less. Of course, I understand that it is a heartbreaking situation and am sorry Brooke has to experience that with her friend. But what is happening with Jessie has nothing to do with the way Brooke treated Arya. If Brooke had snapped at Arya but immediately apologized after, then I could see how returning her purse could be seen as unfair. But I think Kimberly is being too lenient with our daughter, and Brooke needs to understand that going through a difficult situation is not an excuse to behave poorly towards others. Am I the a-hole? Edited to answer a common question. My sister-in-law was holding Arya and keeping an eye on her during the birthday celebration. My brother-in-law was explaining to Arya why she can't blow on candles on someone else's birthday. We were in the middle of correcting Arya when Brooke snapped at her.
Okay. So we have a pretty severe reaction to something that, in my mind, is harmless, only because we're talking about it being done by a 3-year-old. See, that really framed this pretty well once you gave us the ages. Because I thought maybe we were talking about 2 kids.
Close in age.
Something like that. Then you can maybe get behind it, but not really, just because of the words they used as well when they were scolding the 3-year-old. We're dealing with a 20-year-old. And I don't care what you're going through in life. Is there ever an excuse to have that type of unmeasured reaction to a 3-year-old?
I don't think so.
I understand that we can all go through struggles in life, but if that's how you're going to walk around treating people like crap just because you're having a bad day, you're going to find out there's not going to be many people around you at the end. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. Please learn those lessons, especially when you're young. Having a little patience and understanding will go a long way. Now, our OP is asking if he's the a-hole because he's taking the present back to teach his daughter a lesson.
Correct.
I wonder how many other things that the daughter does in her life that they have not taught her well on, if that's something that he needs to teach her a lesson about at this stage.
So our OP did say in his comments, at least it doesn't allude that he's had to take a bunch of stuff like this.
Is this out of the blue type of behavior?
It felt as if that's how he was talking. And it felt as if maybe through his conversations with his wife, that this was the reason for her outburst, was because she was going through this whole thing with her friend Jessie.
But does that give her an excuse? See, that's where you can definitely have your problems going on in life, but that doesn't give you the right to have done what you did.
If anything, there were Redditors that said, why are you still punishing your daughter when it's no longer your place to punish her at that age? OP did say, Brooke is indeed an adult who is responsible for her own actions. It is also true that Brooke lives under my roof. When Brooke starts paying for her own housing and expenses, then she can act however she wants. However, I will not allow any adult living under my roof to verbally attack a toddler. I allowed Brooke to keep the other gift I had gotten her since a Stanley Cup is practical and can be used for school. But I am not going to reward her with a purse when she behaved so poorly towards Aria and refused to apologize. If Brooke had immediately apologized for snapping, then I wouldn't have taken away any gifts. But that isn't what's happened here.
So I guess I'll wrap it up like this, because for me, if you have to teach your kid at 20 to have patience, empathy, and understanding for someone who is 3, maybe there was some ball dropping along the way as parenting is concerned. I couldn't imagine our son at 17 doing that to anyone, regardless of it being a 3-year-old or not. Now I can also understand for the 20-year-old that she's going through a tough time with her friend. Losing friends sucks. I can get that, but it doesn't give you an excuse to do what you did. So he does outline that he's only doing it because she lives under his roof and he's paying for everything. And by that, technically, she would still be a kid. And if you're going to act like a kid, he's going to treat you like one. To me, those are his rationale. Logically, my mind says that he's not the a-hole, but the parent in me says everyone sucks. There's some dropping of the ball there that happened with parenting, because if your 20-year-old thinks that that's an acceptable thing to do, that's not just her fault. That's yours too. But maybe I'm looking at it too Tim-like.
If anything, you make good viewpoints. 100%, I have to agree with you on that front. But let me go ahead and give the consensus. The consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole. And for many individuals, it is because of the huge age gap between both parties. You're talking about a 3-year-old and a 20-year-old. As a 20-year-old, you should know how to behave.
Yep.
But if you don't, then yes, I have to agree with you there. That sort of makes me question how the parenting was for Brooke. And has our OP potentially sheltered, or I'm not sure if sheltered's the right word, but it's the only word that I can come up with. Has our OP sheltered his daughter so much that when push comes to shove in certain situations, they do not have a right way to express themselves?
One little infraction, like it was blowing on candles. You know what you can do with candles?
Light them up.
You can relight them and do it again.
And honestly, I think this is where I side with the OP. It didn't sound like our OP yelled at Brooke. It didn't sound like things got fully out of control aside from Brooke's reaction. The fact that he took back a purse to show that there are consequences to actions.
Hopefully Brooke can learn from it at 20.
I hope so. But it's very difficult, honestly, to teach empathy.
Yes, it is.
Maybe it's just because in my mind, as you know, Timstradamus, I love children. To see an adult behave so irrationally towards a child. Because in my mind, I come back to every instance as a child that I was harshly punished. And maybe that's why I look at children with such a place of understanding and compassion, that they're still learning to see the world and understand it. And everything that they encounter teaches them how to be a person. Or when I look at an adult having such a bad reaction to a child, that child is going to remember that,
yes,
especially at such a young age. I think a lot of instances as we get older sort of becomes more of a water off the duck's back as we get older, because then we take situations very separately compared to when we're a child and it's so impressionable.
Well, age gives us perspective.
Maybe
gives
that's
us
it.
Patience and understanding. But it seems like at 20, there's something missing there. If that's your unmeasured response to that little infraction, I hope that the father got to see some of these responses, and maybe he'll understand that taking away the purse really isn't going to teach the lesson. At 20, it shouldn't be about taking things or giving things anymore. It should be about you sitting down with your kid, an adult at this point, and really getting down to what it is that they believe their base values are. And if they need to go get into counseling to start figuring out how to be given the tools to function in situations that are stressful, please go do it.
Agreed. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about a family heirloom. Am I the a-hole for refusing to buy back a family heirloom? My brother, Jason, died 3 years ago. His widow, Lori, refused to return a necklace he had given her which had belonged to my great-grandmother. The necklace wasn't expensive or really worth anything except sentimental value, and we had wanted it to stay in the family. Jason and Lori didn't have any children that the necklace could be passed down to. Nevertheless, Lori refused to give it back. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. I get a message on social media from Lori asking to meet. She comes over to my house and explains that she had a very hard time since Jason's death and now is in a significant amount of debt, which they were in even when he was alive. She then says she would be willing to sell my great-grandmother's necklace to me for $1,000. The necklace, if an appraiser ever had a look, would say it's worth about $150. I told Lori she was out of her mind to come and attempt to extort money out of me with a piece of my family history, among other things that were not as child-friendly. Eventually, she left. My mom is pretty angry I didn't buy back the necklace. She says I should have at least tried to negotiate with Lori and that standing on principle was stupid. My dad, the necklace came from his side of the family, agrees with me. The thing is, I made peace with not having the necklace. I have something to remember that particular piece of family history, a ring from the same jewelry set. And as shitty as I found it, that Lori wouldn't return it, it felt even more slimy that she held it to ransom all these years later. The thought of her profiting from what I consider a misdeed in the first place doesn't sit right with me. However, my aunts have now heard about it and are on my mom's side, so now I'm wondering if I made a bad decision. Am I the a-hole?
Intriguing story. We can definitely see where, based off the context, it could go both ways. Because Lori could simply just be asking for help, and this is how she's going about it. And then you can see from the OP side rationally that it's being held for ransom and it is a heirloom. But this was a gift given from your brother to his wife. It is no longer yours. And the thing is, your brother chose to give it away. So in my mind, ROP believing that she still has a stake and ownership of it is a problem. I think that's where the misunderstanding is. Now, she's asking if she's the a-hole for not at least trying to get it back.
Correct.
She already says she's made her mind up about it and has moved on. She doesn't need it. It doesn't mean anything to her anymore because she has a ring from the set. If it meant that much to the rest of the family, I don't see why they couldn't have reached out in Olive Branch and had that conversation with her. So them to put that on ROP is interesting. It's not as if they can't have a conversation and go buy the ring themselves. I have to say in my mind, I don't think there are a-holes because Lori has every right to do what she wants with that necklace. If she needs to sell it to make money, to pay off the debt that they're in, so be it. You also have every right to say, no, I don't want to overpay for a memory. That's just how I feel about it. She needs help, it sounds. And are you really going to punish someone for trying to... Because I think maybe in her head, it means a little bit more, right? She's asking for $1,000. Now, we could get into that whole thing. It's only worth $1,000 to the right person. Maybe then we're talking about skeezy behavior, but I don't know that that's how Lori acts. All I heard was Lori held onto a necklace because it was given to her by her husband, who now has passed. I don't know what type of sentimental feeling Lori has towards that necklace now. That was a gift from her deceased husband. So who am I to say that she didn't fairly value that and go, okay, this is worth $1,000 to me, and not the other way, more nefarious way would have been, it's more important to them than it is to a pawn shop or someone else. So that's maybe me putting too much on the story. I guess in the end, I do feel like everyone was allowed to be who they were in the story. You're allowed to ask for the money. You're also allowed to say no. And if the rest of your family really felt that strongly about that necklace, they definitely could have asked and negotiated a price where they felt fair about it.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole, but is not the a-hole because you don't need to buy something that you are at peace not getting. There are individuals that say everyone kind of sucks here. And the reasoning for that is potentially the OP requesting having this heirloom back could have potentially made Lori feel as if she's no longer a part of the family, because that's sort of how our OP comes across writing all of this. There were individuals that asked, how long did it take for you to demand the necklace? Our OP said, I didn't demand, I asked. And it was 7 months after his passing.
Okay.
So it's not like she was immediately at the funeral and was like, hey,
yeah, give me that.
Give me that necklace back. If anything, I found it interesting to listen to how our OP understands heirlooms, because apparently her side of the family has heirlooms and her husband's side of the family has heirlooms. And the way that it's always, I guess, her understanding is if it's not a part of your family tree,
it goes back.
It goes back. And you're sort of the custodian until you do get children. Since Lori in this story didn't have children with OP's brother, there would be no one to pass this down to, which is one of the reasons why OP asked for it back. Now, if anything, there were other individuals that can see it where it could be where Lori's just trying to take advantage of the situation. It's hard for me to say because I side with you. There are a lot of moving pieces, but the gist of it comes down to Lori was given this necklace. And regardless of how you understand that things work in your side of the family, that doesn't mean that that's how things work when it came to Lori and Jason or any other family. You should never assume that generalizing is okay. Ask how it is that things should be taken and treated. I can understand if OP said, look, there was a talk and I talked to my brother Jason. We had agreed that if him and his wife didn't have any children, that the necklace would be handed back in case anything ever happened. And God forbid that anything ever happened. Unfortunately, it did. I think a lot of people refuse to talk about these, what are considered dark topics. I think it is so important, especially when you're talking about family heirlooms, that people understand the nuances of what you're expecting. Because if our OP expected that something be returned back because that's what she would have done, that's not a good way to go about things. And I agree with you, Timstradamus. The $1,000 that Lori tacked to that necklace, who knows if that's the value that she places on that necklace and what she would absolutely refuse to give away for it.
There's just, in your words, a lot of moving parts, and to assume something just because you think it's a skeezy move, I think is a little rushed. I hope the rest of the family, because they have value in that necklace, they definitely need to go talk to Lori and go figure out a price they can all agree on.
And actually, one of the Redditors said in a comment to OP, if this has such value to your other family members, they could just purchase it. And our OP said, you're right. Well, let's go into our next story and see what you think about this instance of cheating. Am I the a-hole for telling my friend's fiance that she cheated on him? Jess, fake name for Post, our 4 homegirls, and I went to Vegas for Jess's bachelorette party. We had a great time the first day until we returned to our hotels at night. Maria, another fake name for a friend, didn't tell us that she had paid for male strippers to come to our suite, and that immediately made it uncomfortable for me and some others. We never agreed to this, nor were we interested. We wanted a girls' weekend. They started dancing, of course, and Jess eventually had sex with one of the performers, oral in front of us, and went into one of the rooms, leaving the door open. Me and 2 other girls left and booked a small room for us 3 that same night while Maria, Jess, and another homegirl stayed. The 3 of us thought of leaving Vegas, but didn't want to come home because our partners might question why we came home so soon, since most of our boyfriends know each other. The next morning, we all got breakfast together, and guess who joins? The male stripper who banged out my friend, and it was so damn uncomfortable. Afterwards, we all met again in the initial suite and had an argument with each other. I have never heard of girl code when it comes to cheating on our partners, and just used every goddamn cliche of what happens in Vegas and that it's normal for bachelorette parties. Pretty much all BS that I see in movies or read from social media. She eventually started crying and talking about her life, and I just simply didn't care. It has completely destroyed our friendship, and now me and the other girls have discussed the possibility of not continuing as her bridesmaids. One of them has told me that we should still go to the wedding and then cut ties after, but I don't know. My conscience can't hold this in, and I feel like it is the right thing to do because I would want that. I want to believe that what I'm doing is a moral good. Am I wrong? How common is this for bachelor and bachelorette parties? Other details if it helps. One of the bridesmaids didn't go with us, and she was on our side about what happened. She's willing to back us on what we decide to do. Since we've returned home, Maria has been harassing us about being fake friends in our group chat. I never really liked that cut anyways. My friends and I also took pictures of them at breakfast for evidence and screenshotted Maria's texts. Am I the a-hole?
That phrase that should universally turn people off to being friends with you if you use it is what happens in Vegas. Regardless of whether or not you're in Vegas, if someone has to say that to you, normally there's ill intent behind it. This is more common than people believe, and it's because it's been normalized. If you feel that your purpose on a bachelorette or a bachelor party is to cheat, you do not need to be getting married. You have found the wrong person to be in love with and get married to. Because, and I'll speak for only myself here, when you have that person, that line of thinking will never cross you. Not once. And if it does, you need to do some inward thinking. If this is something you truly want. Because unless you're in an open relationship, because there are parameters in which that can exist, but that's not what I'm hearing or understanding in here. In my opinion, OP, if that's what your code is telling you to do, if those are your values, then you need to do it. Your friend wanted to blindside you with disgusting values and expect you to be okay with it. I don't care about guy code and girl code. There's just being a good person. And if you're putting other people in your group at risk of betraying themselves, then you're betraying the code. A good person would never put everyone else at odds. That's where it starts. That's why I love when people try to use the code. It doesn't work that way. We before me. So in my opinion, OP, you would not be the a-hole. Be able to live with yourself. Those were their actions, not yours. And if you think that that's okay, get ready for when you're actually in a committed long-term relationship and you're married to that type of person. Because it doesn't stop at the bachelor or bachelorette party. You're seeing their values. Please stop normalizing betrayal. Maybe I got too much.
Nah, you got just right. Well, our consensus is not the a-hole. One of the comments that I think made me smirk a little was, please, please, please save this man. I think I enjoyed reading this one. So let me go ahead and read this comment. It says, not the a-hole. You have to tell her fiance. If someone did it to you, you'd want to know. Save home from a lifetime of this. And she already showed how much you mean to her, calling you fake friends for having morals. Tell him either together with friends or individually how you need to tell them. And I have an update.
Oh.
So let me go ahead and read that out loud. In short, he's calling off the wedding. He was glad that he got this news early on instead of 10 to 15 years later. We all told him together, and he will be okay, but he's going through it, of course. I have talked to Jess, and I'm disheartened that she is blaming her past exes and mom/dad problems for this instance. I've suggested her to seek therapy, and our friendship is, I don't know. I offer her my forgiveness, but I don't know if that forgiveness includes keeping her in my life. And if having two weddings is confusing, in my culture, we usually get two, cultural and American. In cultural, we wear traditional clothing and get money, yes, free, from family/relatives as we begin our lives as one. It can be used for anything like your American wedding or honeymoon, as long as it's for you both. Ideally, it's supposed to make sure that we start our lives together debt-free and that the act of marriage shouldn't be a financial obstacle. Now they have to return that money, and that process is undoubtedly awkward.
There are consequences for your actions.
I don't think we can say that enough.
Hopefully her friend learns from this, gets the help she needs. just blaming bad decisions on everyone else is only going to get you where you got. It doesn't work like that. Get the help you need. And one day I bet, OP, she's going to come back to you because you're one of the truest friends she's ever had.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this potential wedding.
Why'd you look at me like that?
Because I like to. Am I the a-hole for saying no to my fiance's best man's wedding date? My fiance's best man is a millionaire who lives a very different lifestyle from us. I'm a teacher from the Midwest. Ha! They are friends from childhood, and I have tried very hard to like him and find parts of him that I can connect with, which I have. When we met, he was married and has 3 kids. My fiance is a godfather to his firstborn. Last spring, we stayed at their house for their daughter's first communion and met the entire extended family. He's a great dad and seemed like a good husband until last month when his wife caught him cheating with a younger woman. Fake boobs, lips, the whole thing. The divorce has gotten very messy, especially with the kids being involved and all their money. I can't help but be grossed out by my fiance's friend, but I understand they're childhood friends and just try not to involve myself in conversations about it. The divorce will likely take months and is very heated. I'm not even involved, and it makes me sad to think about everything their kids are going through. He's still the best man, and I have no problem with that. However, his friend just asked if he could bring the girlfriend, who we have never met, to our wedding, and I said absolutely not. My fiance was shocked and said it wasn't fair of me to say no. I know myself and how uncomfortable it would make me. Plus, it's a small wedding with only our closest friends and family. It would be different if he had actually been divorced for a while, but this is all happening now and very fresh. Am I the a-hole for saying the best man cannot bring the girlfriend to our small family wedding?
No. And for your fiance to not understand it from your point of view, which would be the correct one, is an issue. Although I guess if I'm looking at it through his eyes, he's going, obviously he picked his boy because that's his best friend. When you get into those type of situations, you can fall into that little hole of, I don't care what you're doing in your life. I love you. I think it's that whole love the person, hate the sin situation. And maybe that's how he's able to look through it and still acquiesce to his friend's decisions. Know that when you do that, especially when you don't respect what your partner's viewpoints on those are, you're going to have arguments. Because by your fiance accepting that that's what his friend did, he's also saying that he accepts those values. I would just say stick to what your values are. Don't let your fiance's, I don't know if it's misguidedness or, again, maybe his values are saying that he's cool with the cheating and we should just accept it.
I would like to just bring this out from earlier. Rose-colored glasses.
And it might be we're stacking those again. Hopefully you give your fiance the perspective he needs on that. Again, it's really hard when you're the friend just trying to support the friend. We can sometimes look past their
faults.
I will know if cheating is a fault. I think it's beyond a fault, but sometimes we can look beyond them and just try to be there for them, not really the action, and then not really help with any of the values. We're all human. It happens. You just want to be supportive. Unfortunately, sometimes our support can look like we are agreeing or
approving of the action.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, stick with your values no differently than the last story. Your gut tells you that you're uncomfortable with that situation because it is an intimate wedding, that you don't want to see him with his new girlfriend that he cheated on his ex-wife with. I think that's more than acceptable, but I do not believe you would be the a-hole.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is not the a-hole. It goes to something as simple as this. It's your wedding and you want it to be drama-free. Simple as that. I have to say there was one comment that really resonated and I wanted to go ahead and read it out loud because I think it kind of just hit in line with everything that I was feeling. You don't need your celebration of commitment to be marred by someone with an agenda of normalizing their lack thereof. Well, let's go ahead and go into our next situation, and I'm Interested to see what you think about it. Am I the a-hole for not wanting a party thrown at our home hosted by people we don't get along with? So my sister, female 22, and I, male 30, had a falling out with my brother, male 40, and his wife, female 35, after they would go around telling my family members made up awful stories / scenarios about us. There was a big confrontation, and now we don't speak to them. They've always been massive shit stirrers. My brother still randomly stops by my parents' house, which is where we live, but it's when we aren't home. Now my mother, female 63, has always had a soft spot for him and will prioritize his feelings over ours, even though he treats her really badly. He yells at her, curses at her, and has even stolen from her in the past, but she always just says, "He's my son, I can't be a bitch like them," and continues allowing this behavior. Yesterday, I found out that my brother and sister-in-law are now hosting a party here. I asked my mom why this wasn't brought up before and why she didn't consider how we would feel and what we were supposed to do while they are here. Now, I don't have enough time to write out all the awful things they said about everyone, but more so about my sister. My sister-in-law would call her awful names behind her back and tell people awful and untrue things about her. I know if my sister is in the same room as my sister-in-law, there will be a big confrontation again. I asked my mom why she hadn't considered this since we live here. I know ultimately it's their home, but we do pay rent and weren't taken into account. There is close family being invited, so are we supposed to either stay in our rooms or just not be around or leave until the party ends? It's just insane to me that she's okay with them hosting a party here when they've both said the most vile things about my mother as well, my sister-in-law especially. After our confrontation, my sister-in-law said she would never step foot in our house again and wants nothing to do with us. But now that they need something, because they don't have a home to host a party in, they come asking my mom knowing she can't say no to him. I told my mom how this made us feel, and she just made it about herself and how much this affects her. I simply asked why there wasn't an alternative presented, park, someone else's house, etc., since it's for their child, female 8. I know my niece isn't at fault, but I truly feel an alternative solution was needed in this case. I again warned her that if they go through with this, knowing my sister, it would not end well. After I expressed how I felt, she literally stayed quiet and said nothing. I'm not sure what to do now. Am I the a-hole?
So let's set the table for this one. OP is 30. They're living at home.
With sister, that's 22.
And they're renting.
Correct.
They're paying rent.
Correct.
All right. So the second that happened, they should have at least been given the heads up or the talking about what was about to happen in the home. But that doesn't seem to be what the mother wants to do. She's 64, gets treated like crap from the other brother that wants to throw this birthday party for their kid. You're paying rent. That's good for you. There are a lot of situations where, unfortunately, kids have to move back home right now. It's a big issue. So I'm not faulting anyone for that. But for the meantime, he's asking if he'd be the a-hole for being upset about this whole situation.
Correct. For not wanting it.
So for me, you would not be the a-hole for having your opinions and feelings about the party. You understand your family dynamics better than I think most of the rest of the family does. But I would definitely use this time you're getting, save up that money and move out so you're not dealing with this in the future. Because this might end up turning into something that you're going to have to keep revisiting, especially because your brother sounds like a tool.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. Many Redditors came out and said, don't feel intimidated out of your own home. Make sure your things are locked up and then just proceed with life the way that you always have.
You pay rent. You live there.
Now I have some updates. So let me go ahead and read those for you. Update. Wasn't expecting an update so soon, but this morning my mom asked to speak to me and my sister, and she actually apologized for not taking our feelings into consideration. Apparently, last night she decided to ask my brother if he had considered what we were supposed to do since we weren't invited to a party being held at our house. I realized I missed this point in my original post. We weren't invited.
Oh.
And he said, not my problem. She asked why we couldn't just get together and work things out for the better. I've stated before, I'm fine trying to talk things out because I have nothing to hide, if he's willing to change and make things right. To which he went back to his usual behavior and began saying abusive things to her. He then told her, I'm not fixing anything. Deep down, they know they're in the wrong, but it pisses me off to no end that you don't see that. Went on to call us unintelligent, liars, etc., etc. He then threatened to cancel the party, LOL, and basically said that she's horrible and ridiculous and is making his wife cry. My mom said she had a moment of clarity and told us he's clearly afraid of talking to you too because he'd have to face the truth of all the awful things they did. Why else does he deflect and yell at me every time I've asked him to try to talk things out? If he thinks he's going to continue treating me like this, he's wrong. So she said she ended it by telling him, all I did was ask you a simple question, and you couldn't give me an answer. If you want to cancel the party, that's on you, but don't try to guilt trip me into compliance anymore. Now I know it's not realistic to think she's going to just change overnight, but I am glad she was finally able to stand up for herself and actually take us into consideration for once. I'm sure there is more to come since it's my brother. As of right now, he said he's canceling because sister-in-law feels uncomfortable now, but I'll update after the planned party date to see if it actually gets canceled or moved. Thank you all for the advice and kind messages as well. I'm still taking all of it into consideration if nothing ends up actually changing.
Good for your mother. Sounds like she stood up for herself, and hopefully you're there for her as well, because it sounds like your brother is a bully.
Well, let's go on to the second update.
Oh.
So I had a feeling this would happen, but brother called mom and apologized for losing his temper with her and said he can't cancel because it's too last minute to find another location to cancel. So he's doubling down now. I think even more so since he knows we aren't cool with it. When my mom asked why we can't get together and talk things out, he said he has nothing to say to me because he's done nothing wrong, and if I can't realize deep down how much I've messed up, I must be unintelligent. LOL. So back to square one, I'm just going to take the advice, protect my stuff, and just stand my own ground too at this point. I'll keep it civil, but I'm not going to avoid being in my own home. I thought it was really interesting. In the comments section at least. So let me go ahead and read a conversation between Redditors and our OP. A Redditor said, not the a-hole, try to rent somewhere else with your sister. When your mom needs someone, she'll find out that her golden child will only come around just to take. OP responded and said, this is the likely outcome. She's always told me that I'm the only one who's ever been there for her through so much, even during sickness, cancer, surgeries, and more. And I really do love her, but I think enough is enough. My brother didn't even visit my mom in the hospital or at home. Another Redditor said, I am you, and I'm here to tell you it gets no better. Now my mother is in an aged care facility. All she asks about is where my no-good brother is at. I have power of attorney, but she's always pushing me to make sure he's getting some spending money because he's such a good boy. He's a fucking a-hole who visits maybe 2 times per year, but guess who's the golden child? I wish I'd made more and better boundaries earlier. It's too late for me, but it isn't too late for you. Be the hero we all need. OP responded and said, I needed to hear this. I'm really sorry you had to go through something so similar. It's a hard reality to face, and it sucks because I can see it happening too.
That's genuinely good advice.
I think a lot of people don't give enough credence that they need the freedom to grow. And don't get me wrong, being there for family, it's great if you can do that, but you shouldn't do that at the expense of your own self. If your voice isn't being heard, then it's probably time that you move on, and it's going to be rough, but I hope that the comment section gave our OP a bit of perspective.
It sounds like it. I do hope for him and his sister that they move out and grow.
I hope so. Well, let's go to our very last story of the day. And are those sirens I hear? Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my name to police and refusing to sign the ticket? Thus, my friends had to walk home instead of go out?
Wee woo.
Basically, this happened last Friday, and now I am being completely shunned at school, and I feel 100% I did the right thing and stuck up for myself and justice overall. I agreed to drive my friends to a party that was hosted by a kid at a different school, so it was pretty far away. I got pulled over on the way. I don't trust any interaction with police, so the only word I said to her was supervisor. I refused to give my license or answer any questions. When the supervisor handed me the tickets, he said I had to sign them or go to jail. I refused to sign, so I was arrested and taken to the juvenile section of the county jail. I thought my friends would be able to drive my car, but my car was towed and my friends had to either get rides or walk. I'm the only one in our friend group, and they had to walk for a mile until they got good signal. My parents had me out in a few hours, and that's a whole other post. But now I'm a social outcast at school and everyone thinks I'm stupid. I think some people are mad because I'm educated and articulate, and I stuck up for myself against oppression. Yes, it is a small incident, but those add up. Am I the a-hole?
So I don't know if the OP clarified in it, or maybe I missed it. What happened?
I find it funny that you say that. He didn't put it in his post, but he did put it in the comments, and it was very simple. They got stopped for loss of traction, damage to public property, too many passengers for a probationary driver, and speeding.
You goon. Look, you got pulled over because you're endangering not just you, but everyone else you're sharing the road with. How old is OP?
Doesn't say, but I'm assuming under 18.
Okay. Obviously, it sounds like someone under 18 that consumes too much social media. I would...
Hey, where's social media?
Don't consume too much of us. I would say you made a mountain out of a molehill. If you're being pulled over, there's a reason. Learn from the mistakes. To me, it sounds like you're one of the people that aren't good with taking accountability. And if you're not careful, those things will catch up to you. So in my opinion, OP, you are a dangerous a-hole. I hope that people gave you perspective.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, let me go ahead and read to you what one commenter said. You didn't stand up for justice. What a silly thought. LOL, you claim you were articulate, but all you said was supervisor. You got arrested for your silly actions. You're not being shunned by your school because nobody wants to associate with you. Kinda did this to yourself, kid. One day you may grow up and reflect back on this as something very stupid that you did as a reckless teenager. Other Redditors were saying police were 100% right to stop you. You were endangering other people. You had a loss of traction and a damage to public property, so you lost control of your vehicle and you hit something and damaged it. Too many passengers for a probationary driver. Your car was overpacked and you were speeding? My dude, you were stupid. Just because you hide behind big words doesn't mean that you are smart.
He's lucky it didn't end in a different result.
A loss of life? I don't think people take into consideration how many car accidents there are. Just in our city alone, it's absolutely astounding.
Well, he sounds like he's maybe 16, 17, 18, something there.
I would say probably 17 by the feel of it.
He's got a lot of growing up to do. Don't put other people's safety at risk.
Agreed.
But that is funny the way he's like explains everything, this whole story, and then fails to explain why he got pulled over in the first place. Just like so you can get on his side, and obviously I was wronged and all these things, and you're like, okay, but tell us, kid, what happened? What did you do? Oh, I lost control of the car. I was speeding. I had a lot of people in it.
I hit something.
But there was a cop that was wrong. Did it look like he was able to take any of the feedback?
It looks like he was arguing in the comments section, then deleted all of those comments and his post.
So he's just always going to be right.
Sometimes some people are going to be that way.
Some people need to learn the hard way, I guess. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
Hopefully for him, he can learn.
Hopefully.
Which one was your favorite one today?
Ooh, which one was my favorite one? I have to say the Crocs.
Why?
Because it's foam toddler shoes. I got to learn a new thing to call our Crocs.
Okay. I can get behind that one. Foam toddler shoes. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays. And every Wednesday on our Patreon, we post Damas After Dark. We would also love to give all of our heartfelt thanks to all of our Teatreons.
Yes, we love and appreciate all you little teabags.
Mwah!
As always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
Ooh, which one really tickled your fancy?
Probably when people think that just because you're at a bachelorette or bachelor party that a moral compass doesn't exist and that your values can be superseded by saying insert gender code.
But what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Oh, please, if you hear anyone say that in your life,
That's so sleazy.
just move on from them. They're not good friends. And remember, if you post it, maybe what happens in Vegas does stay in Vegas.
Nah, all of the internet would tattle.
Yeah.
Well, let's go bowling.